And Matt, hey, I'm really looking forward to a great card coming at you live tonight. It's in 2 hours. The fight card moved an extra hour, but we're going live at the same time so everybody can tune in. Hey, before this video starts, make sure you toss us a like if you're not subbed. Go in there, hit sub, hit notifications so you know when we go live with Fight Night Picks !Kicks. And today's episode wouldn't be possible without our friends at Ringside Beer. Make sure you check them out at ringsidebeerstore.com. And for Fight Night Picks fans only, use that promo code FNP. You're going to save 25% off your order today. They've got some great merch over there. I've got a couple of their tap handles. I got the MMA tap handle. I got the boxing glove tap handle. So make sure you check them out. ringsidebeerstore.com. Use the promo code FNP, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Ooh boy, Matt, and we have a great card, and thanks everybody for joining us today with Fight Night Picks !Kicks. As always, one half of your team at Craig Allen FNP. We got at Matt Allen FNP, and you can find us both at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. And Matt, I'm really looking forward to this card because we've got a lot of fights where the odds are very close, but the fan votes as far as Tapology and over on our Instagram at Fight Night Picks in the story, we toss out the poll on Saturday mornings, maybe on Friday mornings, but we toss them out on Saturday mornings. People get to vote, and a lot of those fights that are very tight and very close, I mean, hey, people are going one way, people are going the other way. So make sure you check us out over there. We're going to be going over those results as the show goes on. We had some issues last week as far as technical issues with OBS, but we're back. We haven't dropped any frames. Knock wood. So, hey, I'm really looking forward to this one. I mean, in our main event, we got a battle of the cookie dusters. We've got Paul Felder rocking the stash. We've got Rafael dos Anjos over there on the right-hand side. He is stashed up. The guy's making the move back down from 170 pounds to the division that he once reigned. It was a short reign, but he reigned it at 155 pounds. I'm really looking forward to this fight, Matt. Let's head over into the chat really quickly. We've got Akash Deep here, as he is every week. Elongated Rat, SAPT, K9, Booch for Snooch, you're here as well.
What's up, everyone?
And so on and so forth. And hey, I have to tell you that this chat has been rocking the past couple of weeks. We've already got a number of people tuning in. You toss that like, it definitely does help us out in the long run. And if you want to help out the channel like Mr. Luxury did over there, make sure you hit up the super chat. We'll do our best to follow along in the comments. But like I said, they move incredibly quick. So if we miss out on your comment, apologies now. But we've got Mr. Luxury saying, a lot of good fights tonight. Excited to watch. Let's get into it, boys. Pip, pip, da doodly do. Hey, let's get into it. Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat as well. And Dave Baker saying, Anders, yes, that fight is out. Paulo, greetings from Brazil. Your predictions are awesome. Eldar saying, what's up? Mayday is here. And I mean, hey, this is a crazy card, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Matt, I got to say this before you get too deep into it because we've got a couple of hours now, so it doesn't matter how long the show goes. But I'm really looking forward to this. We've got Varen Zich, Canadian Pride. Sean, let's get into the main card predictions, boys. Wow. If this is the first time that you're joining us, normally what we'll do, we're going to talk fight of the night as we have been with our longer full card episodes. Then we're going to start from bottom up and we'll try our best to get into that chat. But Matt, I have to say this right now. We have been on an absolute heater the past couple of weeks. Holy smokes, I mean, you went 9-1 last week. I went 8-2. I'm going with some of those underdog picks, Matt, and we both had Glover Teixeira in that main event. So, hey, it's been a great run lately. If you also want to support the channel, Matt, we've got some awesome merch at FightNightPicks.net. Matt's got a shirt and a bag.
Got hats.
Matt's got a hat in his hand.
Very nice, actually.
And Sam B asking what the record was last week. 9-1, 8-2. I mean, you can't complain about stuff like that. So,
we're on a roll.
I'm looking forward to this card, Matt. Let's bring it over to that fight of the night screen. And I mean, hey, how can you deny this main event? You've got the toughest man in the entire world in Paul Felder. Jay Renee hitting us up in the super chat. Thanks for your analysis last week and look forward to this week. We appreciate you, Jay Renee. The super chat's already going nuts. But Paul Felder coming in on 5 days notice. We put our video out for the prediction as the fight was announced. So you had no idea, was Paul Felder getting up out of the announcer's booth and going to fight? What weight was he going to be at? Comes out and says, hey, been training for triathlons. His manager corroborated that. And all of a sudden, boom, he finds himself in a main event. Booch for Snooch hitting us up with a $5 super chat. Teixeira pick was good. Dave Baker with the $5 super chat. How do you predict
Thank
two
you,
flash
guys.
knockouts to sub?
I mean, when you watch enough Glover fights, he's got this classic move where it's get dropped and then find yourself into mount. So just kind of going off watching a lot of his fights, I guess.
Brandon Ridley hitting us up in the super chat. Banking units with Dallin, boys. Let's
Thank
get
you,
into
guys.
it. Let's get into it. All right, so this fight, again, we'll do our best to try and stay on track. I'm looking at Paul Felder, guy coming in on short notice. You know he's one tough SOB. You look at his ranking in that division. He's at 7. Yet Islam Makhachev closer to the bottom of the top 15 in falling out of this fight. I think that's one of the better things that could happen for Rafael dos Anjos, because that fight against Islam Makhachev was going to be a really tough one. I mean, we were getting ready for the prediction, and to tip the hand, I had Makhachev to beat dos Anjos.
Yeah,
I mean, I did.
without a doubt.
In this fight, it's a lot closer than anybody could really predict. And as far as it's concerned, Matt, in a fight of the night type of sense, you have this as your possible fight of the night.
Without a doubt, and really mainly because of this point. It's not all that often where you get a fighter coming in on short notice, and then all of a sudden you're more excited for the main event. Normally, a title fight gets canceled, and then you just kind of have to throw someone in who might not have had a full training camp. And you know that they might not have really even been into fight shape. But with Paul Felder, and that really was the big question mark. It was, okay, how good is Paul Felder going to come back as? Are we going to see kind of the 100% Paul Felder, or is this kind of commentator Paul Felder just come back for a paycheck? But if you listen to any of his interviews, he just seems really calm about the whole thing. He's not putting a lot of pressure on himself. He kind of realizes that, if I win this, maybe we'll do another one. But if I lose, it's not the end of the world. I've still got a pretty good job. And that's the fighter who is the most dangerous. When you don't have a lot of pressure, Chael Sonnen says this all the time. The person who cares less is the person in power. And it is kind of true. And right now, Paul Felder's just kind of showing up. 5 rounds, 155. I don't care. I'll just say yes to everything. And for RDA, that's going to be a little intimidating. You're the former champ. You're coming down. This was your weight class at some point. And now this guy who basically just commentates your fights at this point is sure, I'll do it. You're not that scary. So I do think that there is going to be a little bit of, mental warfare, if you will, because these guys are very respectful towards one another. A lot of respect between the two. They understand how good each of them are. But I do think if you're RDA, for a guy to accept that fight on such short notice, just saying yes to everything, that's going to play with your mind a little bit. But RDA went from defending takedowns for 20 minutes to now possibly being the one going for takedowns for 20 minutes. He's a really odd fighter where if he's fighting a really good wrestler, although his striking is good and he has really good grappling, if you can take him down, he's not as good off of his back. But with Paul Felder, his striking's insane. He has good takedown defense, but if RDA is able to take Paul Felder down, it's kind of like the mirror of, okay, if Islam was able to take RDA down. We know what Khabib was able to do to him, and let's be honest, Khabib and Islam Makhachev's grappling, there is levels to this. Islam is a very good grappler, but I wouldn't really put him in the same category. But I think if RDA can go out there, really put that kind of cardio RDA that we know him for. The last version of that RDA was kind of the Colby Covington fight. I know he lost that, but if you go back and rewatch it, he did better than I remembered. If you go back and rewatch, he was taking Covington down. There were some positives in that fight for RDA, so I do think it will take maybe a bit of a wrestling approach as the fight goes on, but I could not tell you how excited I am for this
And
one.
Unique Boys pointing to the fact that maybe this is where we see Paul Felder retire. Hale John Samuelson hitting us up with the $9.99 in the super chat. What do you guys think is the best bet tonight? By the way, love your work. Keep it up, guys. I mean, for me, I look at this card. I have to be, cards on the table as we always are. It's a tough one. It really is. If I look at a fight where, people have asked all week, what do you guys think? I know Matt's really high on Brennan Allen. I'm not so much with Sean Strickland. I'll put that one out there. But if I'm really looking at this card, it is difficult. I'd say Kay Hansen over Corey McKenna. That's the one where I know it's always tough, and I know we're the guys that said, hey, Molly McCann over Tyler Santos, and it didn't go all that well.
We're wrong.
But Kay Hansen, a little bit more experience. She's continued to really push a good pace. Kevin Gordon has hitting us up in the super chat, too. Thanks for all the work you guys do. We really do appreciate you as well. The super chat's already going crazy.
You guys are awesome.
And so is the chat in general, so we do appreciate you. I think this fight's going to be great.
Oh, one last thing, too. Everyone's making a big deal about Paul Felder's weight cut. RDA doesn't make this weight easily. His body shut down before the Eddie Alvarez fight, and he passed out twice. And I believe it did for the Tony Ferguson. Maybe it wasn't that extreme, but I do know he struggled a lot in that fight to make weight. So I think everyone's just kind of glossing over the fact that, okay, RDA's made weight because he's been in camp this whole time. But let's not forget, this is not an easy weight cut for Rafael dos Anjos in the least bit. So we might not even really see the old version of the 155 RDA. Just last note on that fight.
I'm really looking forward to this one. For me, my fight of the night, boom! Brendan Allen taking on Sean Strickland. And hey, this should be a great one. I wouldn't be upset if either guy wins. This is one of those fights where, Matt, I just tip the can. It's a pop and popcorn type of fight. I mean, yeah, I don't want to throw any cheddar down on this one. As far as the odds are concerned, they're very tight. But for me, it's a tough one because Sean Strickland's takedown defense is very good, and he's fought very good guys at 170 pounds. And before he was in the UFC, 185 pounds, and then in his last fight, he did look good. He was 2 years off. He put it on Jack Marshman. And a lot of people I saw in the comments say, well, hey, it wasn't a good performance because he didn't put Jack Marshman away. Jack Marshman's the type of guy, and listen, you look at his stats and you go, man, this guy's terrible. His volume's bad. His accuracy's bad. His submission and takedown defense is terrible. But he's got a lot of wins on his record. Why is that? Because he's just like his countryman from Wales. He hits so damn hard, and the power carries. I was going to say the carry powers, but the power carries. So you have to watch out. For Sean Strickland, not much time off. That was a confidence booster. That was a tune-up fight. It wasn't as much of a tune-up fight as like a Bellator tune-up fight. But overall, it was a good one. And Brendan Allen, man, I can't say enough good things about this guy. He's a finish waiting to happen. That fight that he had against Kyle Dawkins wasn't a finish.
Great fight.
But it was such an impressive fight between both guys. Kyle Dawkins has a great ceiling. Anybody that Brendan Allen's fought so far in the UFC, it's been very good competition. I expect both of these guys that, maybe, win or lose, you're only a couple fights away from the top 15. The guy that wins this fight probably is in the top 15. And there's a lot of names in that upper tier of the ranking that I think we're going to see filtered out after a while, Crocodile. So for me, in this one, I'm really looking forward to it. Overall, we've got a great card. And again, we've got a lot of great comments. Shamil Makayev is hanging out in the chat. Just my 2 cents is here too. Martin Rodriguez saying Felder cut 22 pounds in 5 days, but hey, he made the weight. And Akash Deep saying that last fight should be a banger. So Matt, we'll go down to the bottom of this card. We'll work it all the way up. If you happen to pop in partway through, this doesn't help you now, but if you happen to pop in partway through, we will recap it at the end. We'll offer up some final thoughts as well. And Martin D still saying, Craig, where's my hat, bro? Hey, fightnightpicks.net. You got to check it out. Now, Matt, I look at our first fight on our card. We've Don'Tale Mayes taking on Roque Martinez. One of the things that we had said in this video, and I don't know if it was you, I know somebody threw this one out there in the comments section, was the fact that Roque Martinez has fought better strikers. You're 100% right. You're right in that. You look at Roque Martinez's total record. He fought Jerome LeBanner, and if you don't know who Jerome LeBanner is, a little bit of a school time, a little bit of a lesson here.
He's all right.
Has a win over Carl Roberson in Glory. He has tons and tons and tons of wins. This is one of those really decorated kickboxers that we happen to see at Ryzen.
Really decorated. One of the greatest kickboxers ever.
That's true. I look at him, I mean, he lost to Sergey Hartanov in Glory in 2013. It's going to happen. But again, this guy's fought some of the best. Jerome LeBanner had a loss to Satoshi Ishii. He has a loss to Semi Schilt. It's going to happen. Yeah. But I look at his fight against Roque Martinez. The guy was like 44 years old. He was yoked to the gills, like he can sometimes in other organizations. And he started to establish his kicks, which looked good. And he started to toss in some nice jabs and whatnot. But Matt, I look at that fight as the fact that that was a kickboxer against a martial artist. And as soon as Roque Martinez wanted to take that fight down to the ground, he could. I look at this fight as, Matt, Don'Tale Mayes, his 2 losses, both of his fights in the UFC, Cyril Gane and then Rodrigo Nascimento. It's going to happen. Roque Martinez is that fine line where if Martinez wins, that might be it for Mayes in the UFC. But Mayes' fight on Contender Series to get in over Ricardo Prezel, a guy who had fought for Ryzen as well. Prezel was a guy that I was talking about back when Fight Night Picks used to just be an audio-only podcast, me droning into a screen.
Look at us
I watched a ton of tape. Look at us now. I watched a ton of tape as... There we go. A lot of tape on Prezel before he even fought Anshe Dalia. The guy was an absolute submission artist, and Don'Tale Mayes went in there on Contender Series and finished him. His second time on Contender Series. Overall, this is a really tough one to try and predict because Martinez got a huge step up in his debut, as did Mayes. Mayes got Gane, Martinez got Romanov. Those guys are legit heavyweights, so this one's tough to try and figure out. And I look at the odds in this one. It does not make sense if you're high on Don'Tale Mayes, a guy who's now a minus, 260 average on best fight odds, and Roque Martinez at a plus 211. I got Roque Martinez at a plus 190. I didn't pick him to win, but again, at plus 190, I can't go with Mayes. This is a super volatile fight.
Oh, 100%. And really, you can say that for any heavyweight combination outside of the top 15 who you have a really good read on as to kind of what their skill set is. You can always kind of say, kind of fade this one, don't really bet on it, just because heavyweights, there's so many question marks. And I think that this was a controversial thing to say, but I do think as, the average MMA fan does start to get a little bit more educated, heavyweight's one of the more boring divisions. Like, I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. They're great for that first round, but since cardio is such an issue for a lot of the guys at that division, it's really hard to say, okay, after round 1, if no one gets stopped, this guy's going to be able to out-grapple or outlast the other. And for me, the boxing of Don'Tale Mayes is very nice. Now, yes, Rocky Martinez fought Sharon LeBanner, a phenomenal striker. The thing is, and I think we can all agree, is Khalil Roundtree the best striker in the world? No, but he still knocked out Gokhan Saki in an MMA fight. Like, the transition from kickboxing to MMA is such a drastic one. Now, Don'Tale Mayes' boxing for MMA is phenomenal. I'm not saying you can go in there with, like, Deontay Wilder and outbox him, but his boxing for MMA is great. He has his hands low. He is good at defending the takedowns. So I do think that Don'Tale Mayes is the more skilled out of the two, and I'm picking him, but I agree 100%. I don't think he's twice as likely to beat Rocky Martinez as Rocky Martinez is to beat him.
Like, if you look at Rocky Martinez, yes, his physique is poor, and I see people in the chat either saying, yeah, it's terrible, or this guy sucks, or whatever. Go back and watch some of his fights. I mean, he's very, very athletic, and he's sneaky. The way that he looks isn't the way that he fights. He'll jump in and throw, like, a lead left hook, and he'll catch guys and hurt them bad. I mean, you go back and watch the fight against Shrek. That's not a good one to look at. Terrible, terrible opponent, but a great performance by Rocky Martinez. You get to see his full arsenal of exactly what he can do. It is a tricky fight, but again, Matt, I'm going to go with Don'Tale Mayes, not switching the pick here.
No.
Now, Matt, this fight card's really weird. Fights have moved here and there and out and about. You might see a different order over on Tapology. But, Matt, in our next fight, this is also a tough one to try and predict. We have Mr. Morono, Alex Morono, taking on Rhys McKee. And I say it's tricky because you look at the fight that Rhys McKee had in his debut against Khamzat Chimaev. And, I mean, Khamzat won. The guy's fighting the third-ranked welterweight. And Rhys McKee, I mean, it was almost like he was a sacrificial lamb in that fight. So, I look at this one. You get to start fresh with McKee, the former two-time Bama lightweight champ. He fought good competition on the way up. I remember in the original fight prediction video, we talked about the fact that Rhys McKee had that fight against my guy, Perry Goodwin, and he put on a really good performance. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. He's got really, really good striking. His wrestling defense is poor, and it's not just it was poor against Khamzat Chimaev. It's been poor throughout his career, but he can normally make up with it for the fact that he can usually pop back up to his feet. He's got slick jiu-jitsu off his back, and again, when he's standing, his striking is very good. Alex Morono, very, very well-rounded. We know that his wrestling can be good. He's primarily known for his kickboxing. I love this fight. This was originally one of our fight of the nights before Brennan Allen, Sean Strickland was announced, or the main event was announced. I love this one. What do you think here?
I think this is a really fun fight. It's a really compelling fight. And again, we wouldn't have picked it for one of our fight of the nights. I guess we've had 4 of them now, but we would not have picked it as one of the better fights on this card if we didn't really believe it. Now, Rhys McKee, I like what you had said. We're not just saying he has bad wrestling defense based on the Chimaev fight. If we, like everyone who's ever fought Chimaev probably has bad wrestling defense if you base it off that. Rhys McKee is one of those guys who figured it out. I'm going to specialize in striking, so I'm going to force them to make the decision. Are they going to take me down and I might be able to get what we'll call defensive submissions? He's got a really nice guillotine, and a lot of Rhys McKee's submission game is kind of built around people taking him down, because he's not going to be the more active wrestler. He's not going to be the one moving in, trying to close distance and get people to the ground. So Rhys McKee on the outside, when he's pumping the jab, he's got really good calf kicks too. He's going to give Alex Morono a lot of problems. But the thing about Alex Morono's game that he doesn't get the credit for, you look at him and Alex Morono just looks like a regular dude, but he has big power when he uses it. And I would say as his career has progressed, we have seen an evolution in Alex Morono's striking to where, yes, he has good wrestling, and yes, he has a very good ground game. And I know people are going to be like, oh, but Khaos Williams knocked him out. Anyone can get knocked out in the first 30 seconds of any fight.
And I see the comments there. I got to kind of go after them. I mean, Todd Boney faced 100% glass jaw Morono. Ray Charles, 27. He's still knocking Morono out. Yeah, Morono can leave his chin back. He goes to throw hooks, and he leaves his chin up in the air. He can get hit. In the Khaos Williams fight, if you go back and watch that, Khaos Williams strikes like his life dependent on a 30-second knockout. And oh, by the way, he gets it, but he misses on a ton of punches. Morono decides he wants to get into an absolute dogfight in that one, and he gets clipped, and he gets finished.
Yeah, it happens. Like, again, do you know what's way better for your favorite fighter? If your favorite fighter ever gets knocked out in a minute, that's a lot better than your favorite fighter getting dominated for 25 of them. So, Alex Morono, yes, he had that mistake against Khaos Williams, who if he touches anyone on the chin in the first round, he's going to put them to sleep. But I do like the overall game of Morono. I know that worst case scenario, if he has to go for the takedown, he can get it. not saying that Alex Morono is this dominant wrestler by any means, but when you kind of compare the two games, I do think that at some point he will start to go for the takedown. He'll start to grind on Rhys McKee. And Rhys McKee, unless he is able to keep this fight at distance, if he's not able to get pushed up against the cage, because I do think that's the problem he's going to have, especially in the UFC at welterweight. Guys in the UFC are a lot more physically strong than guys in Bama. So if Alex Morono isn't able to get the takedown, but he is able to just back up Rhys McKee, keep him against the fence, close the distance to where Rhys McKee can't use that really good reach, I think he will be able to kind of negate a lot of the weapons that Rhys McKee has.
And I mean, Matt, if we have a look at the votes at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, make sure you check them out. 51% have Morono to the 49 that have Rhys McKee. That's good for 203 total votes for Morono to 192 for McKee. As far as the odds are concerned, Matt, Rhys McKee, the biggest mover this week at a 41% clip over on Best Fight Odds. If we have a look at the average, you still have Alex Morono open to minus 300. He's now minus 177. If we look at Rhys McKee, he opened up a plus 250. He's now at a plus 148. Again, I see a lot of people taking Rhys McKee over in the chat. I know we both had Alex Morono as our pick. Have you strayed from that? Do your thoughts change at all?
I can admit that Rhys McKee is a live underdog. I do think he has a chance to win just because Alex Morono will play the game that brought Rhys McKee to the UFC. He will stand on the outside and strike with you if you really want that. Now, he's had varying levels of success doing that in the UFC because you would think, okay, well, Max Griffin's a pretty good striker. Alex Morono outstruck him and hurt him on the feet. So
he almost finished him in the second round.
With a head kick of all things. So I do think Alex Morono is being a little undervalued here. Just people aren't really giving them credit because you always remember kind of the bad moments of him. But I do think he'll be able to beat Rhys McKee. I think that grinding style will eventually get to McKee. Now, if McKee can come out here and get a great win, that's really good for you for European MMA, especially in the UFC, having a guy like Rhys McKee. But I just think Alex Morono is going to be able to get it done. And it's not like I'm the most confident in this pick, but it's hard to not pick with the guy who you see as the more skilled out of the two.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going with Alex Morono as well. It's a tough one, and that is a good point made by Zach G. I think if you're going Morono, you're banking a takedown, and he's never averaged one so far in the UFC. Just my 2 cents saying Morono has poor fight IQ, and so on and so forth. I still like this fight for Alex Morono. Again, there's definitely value in Rhys McKee. If McKee wins this fight, am I going to be upset on this one? No, 100% not. And go ahead.
It 100% is a must-win for both. Jonathan Reynolds just put in the chat. I agree with that because Rhys McKee came into the UFC and it felt like he was one of those guys who was being kept from the UFC. And it's always like, oh, I wonder when Rhys McKee is going to get signed. And oh, I wonder when Rhys McKee is going to get signed. Then he does get signed in probably the worst stylistic matchup for him possible. So now, hopefully, we at least will get to see the full version of Rhys McKee. If I'm wrong on this prediction and McKee goes out there and knocks out Moreno, I'll be excited about it. I think it'll be fun. And I think it'll be kind of good for the division overall. But I just think Moreno, he's got the more well-rounded game. And McKee has these kind of kill zones. If you're at range, he can beat you. If it's on the ground, he can beat you if he has you in certain positions. But I just think the overall game, Morono, probably going to give him the decision win.
So, I mean, Matt, we look at our next fight. We've got Geraldo de Freitas taking on Tony Gravely. And this is a really tough one because you got the Spartan Geraldo de Freitas, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You look at his overall record. He looked amazing in his debut against Felipe Claris. He had a split decision loss against Chris Gutierrez his last time out. Matt, Chris Gutierrez is sneaky. Like, he's going to have some really good fights against guys at 135 pounds or 145 pounds. You've seen how crazy his leg kicks are. And I mean, again, this fight is just a great one because Tony Gravely, he's going to bring that wrestling. He's going to bring that pressure. And you look at the losses that Tony Gravely has on his record. I mean, we're talking some very good fighters. I know one of them that's off the top of my head is Manny Bermudez. And Matt, where is it? I got it in here. Wow. Everybody wants proof. The last live event that I ever went to was NEF, what was it? I think it was 42. Look at that. Manny Bermudez and Bruce Boynton. That stuff exists. But overall, this one's a really good fight. Zach G's loving it. Todd's hanging out, loving the predictions. Who else do we have? FM saying, when are you guys going to do Contender Series videos? When the time allows us, because a lot of those videos take a lot of time, those prediction videos.
We're trying.
But again, overall, I really do like this fight because you have not necessarily a clash of styles, but a complement of styles. Ooh. But I mean, Tony Gravely, if he's going to take you down, you got to watch out for Geraldo de Freitas. De Freitas is coming out of one of the better gyms out there, Novo União. So you have to watch out for striking as well. If Gravely just goes takedown, 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 you never know. We could have a fight just like the Brett Johns fight that he had. That was an awesome fight of the night type fight. Very interesting. This one is a tough one to try and predict. What do you think about this fight?
I think it will be a really interesting one, and I think De Freitas might run into the same issue. We were watching a little bit of film before this was on, a little inside baseball, as Craig would say. We were watching the Kevin Holland, Brendan Allen fight. I do see De Freitas kind of putting himself in negative positions, fishing for that submission. Because if you're De Freitas, phenomenal on the ground, of course, you're fighting a guy who should be actively trying to take you down. Now, Tony Gravely is going to come into this fight with one of two mindsets. He's either going to go, okay, I'm confident enough in my sub-defense where if you look at his record, maybe you wouldn't be all that confident in it, that I can stay on top of him, I can stay in half guard, I can hold him down, and just get off some ground and pound. Win round one, win round two, and then hopefully you can just kind of wait out the last one, sorry. I think that if Gravely comes in here fighting like Chuck Liddell, though, and really using his wrestling defensively, it'll really pay dividend.
Matt, we got to hit up that super chat. GamerBot hitting us up with $50 in the super chat. Your hard work makes us easy money. Glad hashtag free Matt worked. P.S. Do you think Felder really wants this? I think he does.
Yeah.
It's an odd angle that the UFC's played where they made poor Paul Felder cry. Man,
It almost
that hurt.
made me cry yesterday on my couch at 4 p.m.
Man, the guy's dad's gone. I mean, it's sad. But overall, I mean, I really like this fight. If Paul Felder loses, maybe he does retire. The guy's 36 years old. He's in the top 10. He's not super active, but he does make for really good fights. So, again, we just have to say kudos to Paul Felder for taking the fight, and kudos to you for hitting us up with that super chat, because that's awesome. But in terms of this fight, Matt, if we have a look at those Instagram votes, where do you think they're going to be at?
So I'm assuming Tony Gravely will be the favorite. Let me just end this on this. If Tony Gravely fights like sort of that Chuck Liddell style, where if De Freitas is trying to take him down because Gravely is getting the better of him on the feet, and if he can defend those takedowns, really test the cardio of De Freitas and keep this late. I know he got submitted by Brett Johns in his last one. People forget how good Brett Johns is. Like, there was a time where he was one fight away, maybe 2 fights away from the title shot when he fought Aljamain Sterling. So people are really down on poor... I forgot everyone's name. People are really down on Brett Johns, but I don't really take that loss too badly.
Bellator's finest.
Exactly. Tony Gravely losing to him, it's not the end of the world, especially putting on a really exciting fight. So I am going to side with Tony Gravely in this, but I do think this could actually become a very, very fun scramble fest on the ground.
Matt, 63% of the Instagram voters at Fight Night Picks have Tony Gravely to get the win. And if we talk in terms of total votes, that's 245 votes for Gravely to 144 for Geraldo De Freitas. If we have a look at the odds, Matt, Tony Gravely, a slight favorite, open -160, got down to about a -190. Now he's a -143, so that late money is coming in on Geraldo De Freitas, who opened a +140, got up to a +165. Now he's at a +119. This is one of the fights where we actually differed, and hey, it's a tough one. It really is. Connor C saying he's got the Freitas FM tossing us out some nice messages there. We really do appreciate you. You're in the chat every single week.
Our community's the best.
Under the comments or you're here in the chat. And it is. And if you can help us out with a super chat, I mean, you're helping support the channel. If you pick up some of the merch, you're helping support the channel.
Watch the videos.
The boys are trying to do this full time. The question was asked by, Canadian Party Life up there. I believe it was you, Canadian Party Life. What were you doing sitting on the couch at 4 o'clock on a Friday? You're sitting on the couch at 4 o'clock on a Friday watching Paul Felder tape. That video happened to pop up because you're working with Fight Night Picks full time.
Exactly.
And that's the way that it goes. So, Matt, in terms of this fight, it's a really tough one. It's in the same realm as Zach G, who just hit us up in the super chat with $13.99. We appreciate you as well. This is in the same realm as Jared Cannonier, Robert Whittaker, where I said, I think Robert Whittaker's going to win this fight, but I'm going to stick to my guns of Jared Cannonier earlier on in the week. And I look at this one as Geraldo De Freitas. Man, this guy's jiu-jitsu is great, and his Muay Thai is not too bad. He can definitely swing on the feet. He can land a lot of nice combinations as well. I like his game. Tony Gravely's the type of guy that can make this fight boring, or he can make it really exciting. So I will stick with the pick of Geraldo De Freitas as the underdog. It's not one of the most, confident type of picks, but I still will stick with Geraldo De Freitas.
So
here.
I know we're differing in our picks, but I will give you this amount of credit. I'm going to have to quote Teddy Atlas in this. This fight's probably going to be one-way traffic. I just don't know which way it's going to be going. It's either Tony Gravely defends some takedowns, makes De Freitas tired, and then as the fight goes on, really starts to hurt him, or De Freitas is able to really get him in something tricky on the ground, get top position, ground and pound, choke him out. I don't see this fight being a really back-and-forth fight. I do see it being kind of one-sided for whoever gets off first.
Anthony brings up a really good point in the super chat. Let's get into it, guys. Good card tonight, but have to hear your thoughts on Carlos Condit, Matt Brown, and Sean McMinn. Thanks for the super chat as well. That Matt Brown fight against Carlos Condit is like perfect matchmaking, and it's really tough to tell who's going to win that fight.
I think you guys know how I feel about Matt Brown and Carlos Condit. Like, I saw this at like 11 o'clock at night. I was going through Twitter. I'm like, oh, Matt Brown's fighting Carlos Condit. I had to get up and start like fist bumping. I was so happy. This fight, a lot of people remember, was supposed to happen way back in 2017 at Dustin Poirier versus Anthony Pettis in Norfolk, Virginia. Don't know why I remember that so well. But, of course, Matt Brown had torn his ACL before that fight, so it just didn't get scheduled. Matt Brown kind of retired. Carlos Condit kind of retired. But I do like this fight. I know there's not a Legends division, but if everyone can just kind of agree that at some point in the UFC, we have two older guys who, together, they're going to put on a competitive fight. Like, those two guys against any other primary strikers, you might have to worry. But those two guys against each other could have a legitimate fight of the night. So I'm really excited. I do like it when the UFC does kind of do those, kind of nostalgia ones where it's like, okay,
Legends division?
Yeah, where Condit and Brown were at the top of the division at the same time. But they just never got to fight. So even if they are past their primes, I would say they're both kind of at the equal level of being past their primes. So it should make for a super fun fight.
Matt, we got above 100 likes in this video. So again, thanks everybody for
Each
tuning in.
and every one of you are awesome.
Let's get into the next fight, Matt. We have Canada's Randy Marcos, Quiet Storm, taking on Kanako Murata. And Matt, this is one that I've seen go back and forth in the comments all week. It's been a really tough one for a lot of people trying to predict it. If we have a look at Fight Night picks, 67%, that's 2/3, going with Japan's Kanako Murata, the former Invicta Strawweight champ, to get the win in her UFC debut. Are you still thinking Marcos here?
I'm all over the place in this fight because if you watch Randa Marcos, you know that this is kind of a fight she should win. Like, Randa Marcos, what she do well? She has great cardio. She has a very suffocating game. I wouldn't say striking is really the highlight of her overall arsenal because she doesn't really have crazy power by any means. And she doesn't have a really high amount of volume where you can just rely on, okay, I know she's going to throw so many punches that she can at least win rounds. Like, Clay Guida, in my mind, is worth one round every fight no matter what. And I do take that into account when I make predictions. Because to me, in my mind, if you're that active, you're going to win one round at some point. I don't have Randa Marcos as having any of those skills that I think can win you a round. Her top control is good, but we've seen that other people are able to get on top of her. She's got that really odd wrestling game where, and I always go back to that Carlos Esparza fight. Of course, we were there live. I think I'm wearing my UFC Halifax shirt underneath here. Look at that. Can't really see Halifax.
That was awful.
Brown versus Derek Lewis. But no, that fight was interesting because we saw Randa Marcos off her back, but also on top. And the inconsistency throughout her record. I know people like to joke that up until her last fight, it was just win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. But I think she is starting to get a little better of sense for her MMA game. I know you have a lot of concerns about her training and just, how she's been able to train during pandemic, but I do think she'll be able to get it done. I think for Kanako Murata, she's going to have to go for the takedown, and if she is able to get on top, she might be able to hold Randa Marcos down, but Randa Marcos is always going to be scrambling. She's always going to be doing something, especially when it does come to the grappling component of a fight, so at the end of the fight, you might think, okay, Kanako Murata won this fight, but the judges might still give it to Randa Marcos because she just knows how to control throughout an MMA fight.
And I mean, Bert, we have to acknowledge you over in the super chat with the $9.99 hashtag free Matt. Felder RDA, what do you think about the over under 3.5 rounds? Good work. You guys are freaking awesome. I mean, listen, I look at Paul Felder and he's had fights go the distance against some really good fighters. So for Paul, let's just take it for the parts and parcels. For Paul Felder, over. For RDA, I'm also saying over as well.
Really?
Again, I look at the fights that he's had, Matt. Let's go through the last 5 fights of each guy. For RDA, decision against Covington. Decision against Usman. He submitted Kevin Lee, but that was later in the fight. Decision against Leon Edwards. Decision against Chiesa. For Felder, he finishes Charles Oliveira. That's probably the best win on his record, especially it's kind of matured with age. He has a split decision loss to Mike Perry where he broke his arm. Decision against James Vick. Decision Barboza. Decision Hooker. I think it's going to be an over, Matt, in that one.
I agree. It probably will be. The only thing that caused me slight hesitation is if you go back and watch the RDA fight with Neil Magny, and Neil Magny's a phenomenal grappler. I know that fight doesn't really do his game justice, but he is really good on top. We saw a little bit of that in the Robbie Lawler fight, but we saw a lot of it in the Hector Lombard fight. RDA was able to just pass his guard and get immediately into full mount, get him in an arm triangle and choke him out. That concerns me. I don't think he's going to go out there with that game plan. Of course, RDA, phenomenal striker. We normally see him on the receiving end of getting taken down, but this is one of the few fights where RDA, and it's been a while since he's been able to say this, is by far the better wrestler. Like, Paul Felder will be able to defend takedowns. He's super physically strong. He has good takedown defense. So
he has good cardio here, too.
He does have great cardio. I think the first part of this fight is going to be very, very difficult, but I do see RDA kind of starting to take over as it goes on, maybe a little bit. Again, It's one of those hard fights because there's so many question marks, but I do agree. I would pick the over just because both guys are always game for 5 rounds.
And Trent Bossingham, you're here every single week. You're back, fellas, with $4.99 in the super chat. Keep up the good work. You've got Alan Mays dos Anjos, Gravely Smolka, Khaos Williams. Khaos Williams is the only one where I really scratch my head. So, if we're talking about this fight, Matt, Reina Marcos, her wrestling's good, her striking's wonky, she makes every fight difficult, she wins some, she loses some, except for her last 2, they're both losses, she broke that streak. For Kanako Murata, you look at that one loss that's on a record from years ago, and it was against a great fighter that ended up in the UFC after some time and fought some of the best of the best. We look at this fight, Matt, the odds are a little tricky. I mean, you look at it in Kanako Murata, a decent-sized favorite. She's about a 2-1. She opened a -130 favorite. She's now at a -206. That line's moved 35% this week. We look at Reina Marcos. She opened up at +108. She's now at a +171. And late, the money's been coming in. Branch Above, you're also here every week, and I know you are.
Thank you.
And you're there on Instagram as well, at Fight Night Picks. So I said from the start, there's 270 total votes on our Instagram for Kanako Murata. For Reina Marcos, 133. Matt, I still have Kanako Murata here. I really like her wrestling, national wrestling champ. I really like the gym she's coming out of. Silver Wolf with one of the best kickboxers in the world, K1 kickboxer. And Matt, Reina Marcos, again, question marks around her training. She's somebody that's from Windsor. And if you're from Windsor, it's like being from any other border town. Take advantage of what you have. You can go over to Detroit. You can get ready. Ann Arbor, wherever. That's what Reina Marcos does. And in the pandemic, she hasn't been able to. And in her last fight, didn't really do anything that impressed me all that much.
Again, I can't disagree with any of that. I just know that this is going to be a grappling fight. This isn't going to be a fight where Kanako Murata comes in and tries to outstrike Reina Marcos on the outside like a lot of her opponents and a lot of her losses have been able to do. So in any fight that is going to rely heavily on wrestling and scrambles, it's really hard to not pick for Reina Marcos. As the underdog, too, it's not a bad pick.
Remco Foam Studios with the $9.99 in the super chat. First prelim fight, who's going to take it, boys? We both have Dontail Mays. That's a really tricky one. That's one where I took Rocky Martinez at +190, like full transparency. It's too tough to really try and gauge. Somebody that we really like on this card is still Kay Hansen, and Trevor Bennett hitting us up. Happy Saturday. Cheers with a $15 super chat. And Randon Patterson hitting us up with a $5 super chat. The super chat's going wild. So we really do appreciate
you guys.
I don't know if I asked you this question because I got thrown off course, but again, I'm still going with Murata. You're still going with Marcos?
Reina Marcos, I do. I know Murata is going to come in and she's going to try to grapple. It's really hard to pick against Reina Marcos in a fight which will be primarily grappling unless she's fighting Mackenzie Dern. So I'm going to stick with Marcos. Not my most confident pick, but she knows how to be involved in a split decision, and I only need one judge to think she won and not Murata.
All right, Matt. So our next fight, Jose Quinones, Luis Smolka. Let's have a look at the total votes because this is another one that's really close. Over on Instagram, at Fight Night Picks, we got 55% of voters going with Smolka. 45% going with Jose Alberto Quinones. If we have a look at the odds over on Best Fight Odds, Matt, it's a really tricky one. The odds were close to par when we made the video. Smolka opened a -135, got as far down as a -165. The line jumped back up. He's at a -135. The money early was on Smolka, and as the week went on, a lot of people going with Quinones. Maybe they liked your pick. Who opened a +115. Excuse me, now at a +111. So it's a tricky one. I know we differed on this one. Luis Smolka also coming in having missed weight, and I see Jonathan Reynolds saying that. I'm sure there's a lot of people there as well that are going to say that. But yeah, it's a tough one. Quinones did get finished by O'Malley. Canadian Party Life saying that one. I'm not going to put the curse on the curse on the board. It's hidden. That's how this works. Little inside baseball. You people swear, we lose money. So please don't. Please don't. But Matt, on this one, are you thinking anything different? We've got George Grun hitting us up with the 20 pounds.
Thank you.
Shout out from Stoke-on-Trent, England. Your videos helped me win $2,500 from a $20 stake in the Habib Gaethje card. And Blake hitting us up,
guys,
saying, looking forward to your content every week, fellas. Keep doing what you're doing. You're killing it. This super chat this week is the reason why Matt can make Fight Night Picks a full-time job. So, hashtag free Matt. Maybe soon, hashtag free Craig. I saw somebody throw that one up there.
That's the real next step.
We're going to have to grow this channel 5 or 6 times what it is. Sean McMinn hitting us up again in the super chat. My mind is melted.
It is. Again, I stand by. We have the best community of any MMA channel. I don't think that's crazy. I think y'all would agree because you're members of it. But no, this is awesome. Thank you guys. Again, can't say enough nice things.
And a good
about y'all.
point, Dimitri. I know you ask this one often, Dimitri. I'm pretty sure you do. But with all these Bellator stuff, if we have enough time, I'm serious, we'll go back to doing Bellator because we did it in the past. So Bellator, Dana White's Contender Series, keep throwing that stuff out there. It gets a little crazy because I get about, and I'm not joking, about 50 DMs a week that we should do Contender Series. It takes a lot of time to do these videos, but again, if this keeps up, we'll do it for sure. So Matt, can we please talk about this fight? Manasseh asking if I'm a father to a dog. And Booch for Snooch, you're hanging out and everybody's having an awesome time. So we differ on this pick.
We do.
I'm still with Smolka.
You need to stop.
He's a smaller guy at 25.
No, he's not.
Well, again, he had a hard time. You know who was a guy that used to fight at 25, then he fought at 35 and he had success, then he moved up to 45. You can call me Dragon, Jonathan Martinez. Ooh boy! Luis Smolka, though, I still have Smolka in this fight, Matt. I mean, his striking's good, and his submissions are sneaky. And Jose Quinones hasn't beaten a good guy in the UFC. Everybody that he's beaten is no longer in the UFC. And the guys that he's lost to are halfway decent. I think Luis Smolka's halfway decent. I think he wins this fight.
You threw a lot of shade on Quinones right there without mentioning a lot of the downfalls of Luis Smolka. Luis Smolka, a guy who primarily relies on his jiu-jitsu. He has better striking. He is getting better with his striking. But he doesn't have great wrestling. Now, Jose Quinones has one thing that I think is very underrated when we talk about things like wrestling defense, footwork. I know people are always like, oh, but it's about underhooks because Dominic Cruz mentions it. Footwork is so important for defending takedowns, and I think more than anyone, not a great example, but Wonderboy Thompson's a good example of that. Wonderboy, if he is able to, keep his range, he's almost impossible to take down. But if you can get close to him, you can. I know it's weird how that works. So anyone who has good footwork is able to beat. I don't want to call Luis Smolka a basic grappler because I do think his jiu-jitsu is very good. But if you go back and watch a lot of his fights, it's not like he's out there, volume takedowns going for them, trying to get on top like a Brennan Allen and then going for a lot of hellacious ground and pound. If Luis Smolka gets on top of you, it's not a death sentence. Now, I know a lot of people aren't like this, but there are certain guys who, Brian Ortega, for instance, every millisecond you're on the ground with Brian Ortega, he can grab your leg, he can grab your arm, he can grab your neck. It doesn't really matter. You're just always in danger. Luis Smolka has good submissions. He can work to them, but I don't really see him being that like one hit, one kill like Francis Ngannou on the feet with it. So I think if Quinones can keep this fight at range, really just jab for 15 minutes. I don't see it being much more confusing than that. Luis Smolka, force him to come to you. He doesn't throw a lot of straight punches. He throws a lot of hooks. And Quinones, again, people saw him getting knocked out by Sean O'Malley, and everyone must assume, oh, well, Quinones isn't that great of a striker. You're going to get knocked out by Sean O'Malley. Like, if fights stand primarily on the feet, say what you want about his leg strength, but, like, he is phenomenal. So I do think Quinones didn't really get or hasn't been able to show the full version of himself to this point in the UFC. I think Luis Smolka is a more beatable opponent for him. Both guys need a win, though. This is one of those fights where I don't really think we can stress that enough.
And Matt, Robert hit us up in the Super Chat saying, keep it up, guys. Hail John Samuelson back there. Hashtag Free Craig. Hashtag Free Craig. I don't think, employers would like that, but still, I look at this fight again, Matt. Luis Smolka, his wrestling defense and offense, they're not great, but he's one of those fighters, like we always talk about. He's not afraid to go to the ground because you know how slippery his submission abilities are. Now, is he the best guy off his back? Well, we came up with a term about him, so he's not that great off his back. But Jose Quinones is not the best wrestler. 45% takedown offense, 50% takedown defense. He throws a lot of takedowns, but doesn't really keep a lot of people down. He moves in a big circle. I saw that comment out there. And he just kind of pumps stuff out there and hopes it lands. And he's beaten beatable guys that are no longer in the UFC. Again, if we have a look at those total percentages for the picks, we talked about it. 55% was Smolka. That's good for 224 votes at Fight Night Picks. And if we look at Jose Alberto Quinones, 182 votes. I love the comment from Anthony saying if Smolka embarrasses himself again tonight, we need the Luis Smolka Effect merch. Maybe we do, and it'll be idea. Luis Smolka
just laying like this. Down.
And man, that's shade to Luis Smolka, and I don't mean any harm, Luis Smolka. If you see this, Bob Lee Swagga hanging out. What's up from Ontario, Canada? We're on the East Coast. Matt, if we look at the for some reason I blanked again. We talked about the odds before. They're basically where they were when they started. I'm still on Smolka.
I still got Quinones. We disagree on a lot of picks this week, so one of us is going to have probably a great week, and one of us is not. So this should be interesting. I will take
the trophy back. I get it for the year. And Matt, let's move into our next fight. We have Kay Hansen taking on Corey McKenna. And I know we talked a big game about this fight. Corey McKenna, let's give her credit where credit's due. Big win over Vanessa Demopoulos in her last fight. That was one of those fights on Contender Series. And again, everybody says, hey, why don't you do Contender Series? Well, normally a lot of the favorites win. I don't know if you've seen that. Almost all the favorites win, and almost all the people that the UFC push, they win. Like, the UFC, I'm looking at the TV that we have in here, but the UFC does these videos every week where it's like, hey, these are the fighters you should look out for. And a lot of the time they win. Corey McKenna was not one of those fighters on Contender Series. Now, I look up in the super chat, Chris Thompson hitting us up with the Canadian $34.99 saying, Glover in round 3, Matt, did you bet it also?
Yeah, I did. No. My roommate caught me fist bumping in the living room because I was pretty happy. Now, for full transparency, I said Glover was probably going to win by TKO in the third round, but I did bet Glover to win in the third at plus 1340, and then I bet him to win outright at, I think it was around plus 200 or a little bit above. So no, I had a good weekend last weekend.
MMA Hypothesis on Instagram. So give Chris a follow on Instagram.
Thank you.
And if we're not following you, we'll make sure that we do, because Instagram got over 1,000 followers this week.
And
so
then,
that kind of went crazy.
Also, is Leon Edwards at 170 too crazy? I gotta be honest, I think Leon Edwards is gonna outclass Khamzat Chimaev. I'll say that right now, and this will be the hill that Matt Allen FNP dies on. I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'm gonna say the same thing I was gonna say if he fought Damian Maia. There's gonna be a certain point, and this happens with every good prospect. A good prospect is only good until they fight a great fighter. And you can say what you want about Leon Edwards. I have a lot of friends who aren't nearly as high on him as I am, but when you look at what Leon Edwards does well, he's a phenomenal striker. Like, his boxing IQ and his just striking IQ is insane. Go back to the Gunnar Nelson fight. Say what you want about Gunnar Nelson, but the way that you can see Leon Edwards' brain working throughout that fight, it reminds me a lot of, and of course a basketball reference, LeBron James in 2011 against the Mavericks. The Mavericks figured it out. The way to beat him is overload his brain, because LeBron's so smart and he sees the game a certain way. If you can just really make him think a different way, then you can beat him. I do think Leon Edwards is going to show Khamzat a lot of what he's not used to. I think Khamzat can win. I do think it's possible. I think anyone who has that much power and that good of wrestling is going to have a chance against pretty much anyone.
Sam B, I like you. You're here every week. You're wrong. Leon's too small and has no wrestling. Go back and watch his fight against Gunnar Nelson.
Not even, and people forget, do you know who Leon Edwards has fought in the UFC? Craig and I have these prospects, not really prospects, but guys outside the top 15 who we like to see guys beat. Like, Leon Edwards beat Brian Barberena. That's a guy who, when you're on the rise, if you can beat him, that kind of stamps you as, okay, no matter what, you're one of the top 25 welterweights in the world. If you can beat a guy like Brian Barberena. Then he beat Vicente Luque. I don't know if you've watched her videos, but like Vicente Luque's up there for me. I can't say enough about his skills. And then he beat RDA and Gunnar Nelson. Those 4 wins are a lot more impressive to me, at least, than a lot of the wins that Khamzat has. Like, Chimaev's beaten guys outside the top 15 or who weren't even in the UFC the week prior to it. So, again, I understand the hype. If he wins by knockout, you guys can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. I don't mind. I can take the heat. But I think Leon Edwards has got it. I'm confident about it, too.
I think it's going to be a great fight. I got to go back and watch some Leon Edwards fights because, hey, they kicked him out of the rankings because it's been a while. But again, if memory serves me correct, this guy's been on an absolute run. And his only loss in recent memory is Kamaru Usman, who's your champ. So that's kind of crazy. I'd love to see a rematch, especially at this point where our guy Leon Edwards is, because his wrestling is great. He's a very complete fighter. You just think of him as the guy that boxes, but really he's very well-rounded. And hey, his brother Fabian isn't that bad of a fighter as well. So Matt, let's talk about this fight. Kay Hansen and Corey McKenna. And I started off by saying Corey McKenna was one of those fighters that the UFC, not to say that they didn't want her to win, but they marketed the hell out of Vanessa Demopoulos. You saw a lot of her in the promos. You saw a lot of her online.
She was on that Beastmaster show that was like American Ninja Warrior on Netflix.
I didn't see that, but continue. It doesn't matter about this. She's lost 2 fights in a row now. She lost her last fight for the LFA belt. Corey McKenna has looked great. Her level of competition on the regional scene, not that great, but again, she's 21 years old, and she has what? 4 less fights than Kay Hansen. They're both 21. It's insane. You don't see a lot of fighters with less than a 60-inch reach. Corey McKenna's got one, 58.5 inches. Will that make a difference in this fight? I don't believe so. This is going to be Wrestle Scramble City, I believe. And again, Corey McKenna coming out of Team Alpha Male. You can say what you want about old punchy Darren Elkins, the damage. But man, the guy embodied Team Alpha Male in his performance against Eduardo Garagori last week, where he got hit, and hit again and hit again. It was like mini Glover Teixeira, but he just kept wrestling and pouring on a pace, and that's what those fighters are normally known for. Andre Fili's a bit of an outlier, but Corey McKenna coming from a great gym to get ready for that. And I know Cynthia Calvillo spent time at Team Alpha Male in the past. It worked wonders for her at the time. And I think Corey McKenna coming out of that gym, it's really going to help her in this fight. It is a tough one. And I know, Matt, we both took Kay Hansen to get the win. What do you make of this matchup here?
So I don't see this being the most compelling matchup in the world, and I do like what you had mentioned about Team Alpha Male, but to me that's a bit of a negative. What's Team Alpha Male very well known for? Their wrestling and their boxing. Now, not to say Corey McKenna couldn't go out there and outstrike Kay Hansen, and not really anything bad against Kay Hansen, but what we've seen a lot from her in her Invicta career, in her UFC career up until this point, she's good in the clinch, she's good on the ground, but her distance striking isn't the best part of her game, I'd say, whereas Corey McKenna, not that it's, she's not Santiago Ponzinibbio by any means, but she does have good striking, good boxing too, throws nice straight punches down the middle, and she doesn't have a lot of wasted movement. There's a lot of fighters in the UFC. Johnny Walker's a guy who comes to mind where if he doesn't hit you with that crazy knockout or anything, then he's just gonna move around way too much and waste a lot of energy that way. Corey McKenna, very technically sound, I would say, doesn't do a lot of these crazy techniques that are gonna get her overly tired. My issue though is she is eventually going to have to mix in her wrestling at some point. And whether that be the first round, second, or third. But at some point, Corey McKenna will be looking for the takedown. And I mean, we all know what Kay Hansen can do on the ground. Kay Hansen has one little Nate Diaz problem, though, that I feel like we should probably mention, just for complete transparency. She has a cut over her left eye that seems to reopen a lot in her fights. Now, it's she got it cut in Invicta in one of her earlier fights. And then in her last fight, it got cut open again. Just something to watch out for. I don't think it's cause for concern. I don't think Corey McKenna's going to win via TKO.
It's high enough where it's not really in the eye, but you're right.
But yeah, it's a very gnarly looking cut, so I wouldn't be surprised if Corey McKenna is able to damage Kay Hansen and actually put the fight on her a little bit, just sort of reopen that maybe or cause some damage. But I do like Kay Hansen in this. Corey McKenna's gonna have to go for the takedown, and Kay Hansen on the ground. For prospects, especially in 125, Kay Hansen should be able to beat them.
Macy Barber got a big fight coming up
She
too,
does.
but again, this one at 115, Matt.
sorry.
So, Matt, I look at this one over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. Large majority with Kay Hansen. 75% to the 25% who have Corey McKenna. If you want the numbers, I'll give them to you. 308 total votes for Kay Hansen to 102 for Corey McKenna. If we have a look at the odds, as Mr. Nostalgia hits us up from the Philippines, we appreciate you tuning in and hitting us up in the comments. Kay Hansen opened to minus 130. The line dropped to minus 200. She's now at a minus 207. For Corey McKenna, she opened up at a plus 110. The line jumped up. She's now at a plus 171. Not overly surprised. I really like Kay Hansen in this fight, Matt. Corey McKenna's good. It's really early for both of these women in the UFC. You don't normally see a lot of fighters with less than 10 fights in the UFC unless they really think something very highly of you. So Corey McKenna to beat Vanessa Demopoulos showed enough to the promotion that, hey, let's put her up against Kay Hansen, that had a fight where she was losing on the feet against Jinyu Fry, but she ended up coming back. That submission was great.
It was.
She had the armbar locked in, and Fry rolled and turned right into it, and it was an awkward looking submission. But Kay Hansen really making up for kind of the start of her career. It wasn't all that impressive. Rose through the ranks as one of those young fighters that we always wanted to see in the UFC, and now we get her. I have Kay Hansen in this one. Matt, this is our possible fight of the night.
I'm excited.
Patch Jordan hitting us up. Enjoy you guys a lot. All the love from Jamaica. Wow. People watching in Jamaica.
Wild.
And we really do appreciate everybody for tuning in. I mean, right now we're up to 913 concurrent viewers and 199 likes. So somebody else has to toss that like to get us above 200. But in this fight, really tough to call. I don't have any cheddar on this one. To me, it's the old pop and popcorn fight. Brendan Allen, Sean Strickland. Matt, you called Brendan Allen your lock of the week.
Yep. Now I have to defend that.
I picked against you.
Yes.
What do you think about this one?
Again, this is kind of one of those one-way traffic fights, and I hate to use that term a lot, but it is. Because Sean Strickland, what does he do well? Keeps really good range. Here's the thing I like about Sean Strickland, too. We see a lot of guys move weight classes, and they change their style a little bit. They kind of have to adjust to the added weight, or...
Sean Strickland started his career he fought at light heavyweight, fought at middleweight, fought at 70, and then went back up to middleweight.
Exactly. But the thing that you like about Sean Strickland is, whether or not they have fought there in the past, is that he fights the exact same way at 185. We just see a very improved version of Sean Strickland. I don't know if the weight cut was just really severe to 170 to where he didn't feel like cardio-wise he could keep up with where he should be. But at 185, and I know the sample size is only Jack Marshman, and, it's easy to get excited about a fight like that, and it's nice to get excited about a fight like that, but beating a guy like Jack Marshman very, very badly does not prove as much to me as a guy like Brendan Allen, who has not only been hurt, but he's been rocked, he's been out-grappled in some fights, but there's never that, and this is so cliche, because it's not like Sean Strickland's going to give up. But you can tell in the Brendan Allen fights, every second that he is in the fight, he's always trying to work to a victory. He has that Glover Teixeira in him, where you could be on his back, you could have the choke set in, it's not going to stop him or ever kind of, it's never going to get him down on himself. He's always going to be going for that finish. I like him at top position too. I think Brendan Allen, not that he's got the one-hit, one-kill jiu-jitsu, he's got brutal ground and pound though. We saw that in the Tom Breeze fight, and you can say, hey, Tom Breeze, you never know what version you're going to get. We don't know what version we got that night. The only thing I know is that Brendan Allen knocked him out in under a minute, and it was all due to ground and pound. And the thing I like about Brendan Allen too, he doesn't just get on top, go for ground and pound, trying to get the TKO, and then if he doesn't get it, he's tired. He's a very smart grappler and wrestler too from top position, because he's going to go for the ground and pound to then open up the submission and make it a lot easier for himself. So I like the dynamics of his game. I think Sean Strickland has more than enough area to win this. I think his striking is phenomenal. He has good power and volume, which is something that it's not really something that goes together. Whether they have a number next to their name or not, if you have power and volume, it can take you a really long way. If Sean Strickland can defend the takedown, that's really what this all comes down to. If Brendan Allen takes him down, Sean Strickland can get back up. He has good jiu-jitsu, but I don't really think it's at the ground game of a Brendan Allen. If he can defend the takedown, though, and keep this at range, it becomes very interesting.
Sean Strickland has great takedown defense at 81% in the UFC, and Matt, he's taken on some great competition. His only losses, Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos. We're talking Kamaru Usman, your champ. And then we're talking about Santiago Ponzinibbio, a guy that's like the people's champ. Everybody loves Santiago Ponzinibbio, except for the guys that have to fight him. Now, Matt, I like Sean Strickland's takedown defense. The question is, and I see it in the chat every now and again, what about that there kneecap? And he did lose a part of his kneecap in that motorcycle accident. And yeah, people said, oh, he looks stiff, and they didn't like, we talked about this before the episode even came on. We're really hot and heavy on this one. We're not going to come to blows. I'm not going to fight my brother on this one. And we appreciate you, Nathan Gass, hitting up the super chat.
Thank you, Nathan.
But again, I think his takedown defense is going to be fine. Anthony's asking me what it's going to be like. I'm fine with it. It's cool. Todd, you like my pick. But overall, again, his takedown defense has been amazing so far through his UFC career. Kamaru Usman took him down twice. Alex Garcia took him down 3 times. Alex Garcia, as far as judo and wrestling is concerned, is great. His cardio sucks. His submission defense is terrible. Sean Strickland submitted him. Sean Strickland's cardio is good.
It is.
He looks good at 185. This fight at catchweight at 195. Do I think it helps out either guy more? I actually think it helps Brendan Allen more. Brendan Allen's huge at 185 pounds, and I never have to worry about him in a weight cut. I don't have to worry about Sean Strickland in this one, too. I love that Sean Strickland throws together nice combinations. I love the fact that he's trained at Syndicate and Kings for the majority of his career. You want an example of somebody that's good from Kings MMA lately? Look no further than the Georgian Giga Chikadze. Throwing out that Chikadze kick. But Mike Tyson with Rafael Cordero. You have a guy in your main event, Dos Anjos, that's trained there for a really long time. Matt, in terms of this fight, I still have Sean Strickland. So, you've got Allen, I've got Strickland. Let's see what people are thinking over at Fight Night Picks. 76% going with Brendan Allen to 24% that I have Sean Strickland.
Thank
322 votes for Allen to 103 for Strickland. And Matt, we have a look at the odds. Brendan Allen is the favorite in here. He opened up a plus 105. He's now at a minus 124. That line has moved 23% so far this week. Again, best fight odds. Sean Strickland opened up minus 125. He's now at a plus, 105 or so. Matt, I got Strickland here. I'm loving the fight. I think it's going to be great. And again, the one other thing that I wanted to say, there was a big commentary, the fact that people said he couldn't get Jack Marshman out. Well, I said it at the start of the video as my fight of the night. It doesn't matter. The guy looked great in a rebound fight. He looked a little robotic to start, but I'm fine with it. I'm absolutely fine with it. His striking looked great. He put it on him. I'm fine with him saying, let's throw down right now. I'm fine with him trash talking because you know that he has enough swagger that he wants to stand and trade with a guy who carries his power late in Jack Marshman, who, listen, the guy has power and that's all he's got. That's all the guy's got.
Okay. I could get excited about Sean Strickland beating Jack Marshman. I really could. But it's very easy to get excited about Brendan Allen beating Kyle Dawkins and Kevin Holland. And, well, he's supposed to fight Ian Heinisch. Like, Brendan Allen's one of those guys who, yes, he's not in the top 15 yet, but he's very, very close. And I do think just 1 or 2 more wins, he is going to get to that level. I would really like to see Brendan Allen against the top guys in this division. And even if he loses this is the great thing for Brendan Allen. And it's not really the same luxury that Sean Strickland can have in this fight. Brendan Allen can lose this, and it doesn't affect his career trajectory in the least bit. Could even help him, honestly, in the long term. Sean Strickland, if he can get this W, means so much to his career. Because it's been a while since Sean Strickland has beat one of those guys who, you know, beating a guy like Jack Marshman's one thing after a big layoff. Beating Nordine Taleb by stoppage is nice. But beating Brendan Allen at 185 when he is on such kind of an uptick, and not to say he's the hotness in the division, but I would say he's one of the more hyped up prospects right now at 185 that... it's really hard to pick against Brendan Allen right now. I would pick him against some guys in the top 15. That's how confident I am with Brendan Allen.
I love this fight, Matt. So overall, let's move on and go from, hey, this is a great fight. Yikes. Ashley Yoder's 7-6, but she's fought really good competition in the UFC, and that has to be said. Miranda Granger, coming out of CFFC, former champ over there, comes into the UFC. And I mean, the first fight that she had against Hannah Goldie, that was a good win. I mean, Goldie was one of those fighters that they kind of pushed a little bit. And then you look at her last one, she got finished by Amanda Lemos. Matt, Amanda Lemos, or Lemos, fought at 135 pounds against some really good talent. So it is what it is. I mean, I'm fine with Miranda Granger losing that fight to go into a fight against Ashley Yoder where Yoder's striking is very good. So is Miranda Granger's. We really like the combinations that Granger throws. I'm speaking for you here, but I really like the combinations that Miranda Granger throws. Ashley Yoder will bring it. And again, if you want to talk about some of these fights that Ashley Yoder's had, she's 2-3 in her last 5. But if we go back to the end, Mackenzie Dern, she lost to. She beat Amanda Bobby Cooper by split, no longer in the UFC. She beat Siri Kondo, no longer in the UFC. She lost to Randa Marcos by split. That's going to happen. And then she lost to Lavinia Souza. Again, I remember saying this in the original prediction video. Ashley Yoder had a head and arm throw against Randa Marcos. Most people don't do that to Randa Marcos. Hopefully, I mean, we see it from Kanako Murata on this card. But you've got a really good fighter, again, in Ashley Yoder, whose record kind of precedes her, and you got Miranda Granger. They both do a lot of the same things. Who do you have in this fight?
I think that's the most important thing to mention. They both do a lot of the same things. Now, I'm going to refer to Miranda Granger, though, as Ashley Yoder 2.0. I just think she does a lot of what Yoder does, and just a little bit better. Yes, she got submitted in her last fight, but again, it was against a woman who was much bigger than her moving down. Lemos, there's nothing wrong with her either. A lot of people think that, oh, if you lost to her, then, you know, it might spell trouble for the future of your UFC career. Ashley Yoder's not this dominant force, and Ashley Yoder's not a specialist, which I do like from Miranda Granger. It's not like Ashley Yoder is so good on the feet that you have to take her down, or she's so good at wrestling you have to focus a lot on takedown defense. Ashley Yoder is going to give you what she gives you. You're going to be able to win rounds from her just based on your output and just based off some of your clean shots that you land, because Yoder, she might hit you clean, but there's never a reaction from it. If you're Granger, if she catches you right on the chin, it's not like she's throwing like a Jairzinho Rosen strike and it's going to whip your head around. If Granger can keep the pressure going and just start landing in volume on Ashley Yoder, I don't think Yoder will be able to keep up with her throughout this fight.
I mean, Matt, this should be a good one. I still have Miranda Granger. 100%. I mean, if we have a look at the odds just quick, she opened a -170. The money came in, and just about all week, it was at par. And then on, well, I guess no, not even. On Monday, the line dropped again on Miranda Granger. She's still a favorite. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, most people also have Miranda Granger to the tune of 286 to 119. We're sticking with Granger. And again, I see a lot of people asking, well, why are we going overtime? Normally, we don't go more than an hour. It's because we still have an hour to go. So, let's look into our next fight, Matt. Abdul Razak Alhassan taking on Khaos Williams. And Khaos Williams was a guy coming into the UFC. I looked at his record and went, what? This guy's got a good record, but why is he coming into the UFC? I mean, he didn't beat a lot of top-level guys. And by top level, I mean even fighters with winning records. Khaos Williams was fighting guys that were, you know, the 14 and 40 of the world. And let's go through it. So, he beat Jeremy Holloway 10-3. He beat Bo Yan, who was 8-10. He beat Ladarius Jackson 6-5. Tony Hervey 17-19. PJ Kajigas 7-7. I mean, he wasn't beating the best guys. And for Abdul Razak Alhassan, before he went away, he just kept winning. And he just kept finishing guys. And out of all of his wins, they're all by finish. He's very impressive. The issue that I have, 2 issues. Missed weight in his last fight. You see it there by the asterisk. Missed weight in this fight. His cardio last time was terrible. Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat. Holy
Wow.
Frig. Joey hitting us up with the $99.99
Again.
super chat. Do you want a dance out of us? There's the dance. All right. We
Thank
really
you, though.
appreciate you,
Again,
Joey.
You guys are amazing. We can't say that enough.
In this one, Matt, I see a lot of hipsters going with Khaos Williams. What are you thinking here?
Those hipsters need to stop. I understand Abdul Razak Alhassan missed weight. He's a phenomenal striker. Now, not to say Khaos Williams can't go out there and kind of do to him what has been done to an Abdul Razak Alhassan. You can make him tired. Now,
Amir Lazez did it.
Amir Lazez did it.
Munir.
Omari Akhmedov did it.
Munir Lazez,
Munir
Matt.
Lazez.
There we go.
Omari Akhmedov was able to do it. Now, the weird thing about Abdul Razak Alhassan is he's basically the definition of you have 4 minutes to beat him. Or you have 4 minutes to survive, I should say. And then you have about 11 minutes to beat him. Because he comes with such a Rumble Johnson storm. He's going to be throwing head kicks, straight combinations. Every punch he throws feels like it's an overhand, right? Whether the technique itself is a jab or not. If he lands on you, it's going to hurt. Khaos Williams, yes, he had that really nice win in his last one. I do think a lot higher of Alex Morono than I think other people do. But again, you caught a guy clean early on in a fight. Now, if he had gone out there and beat Alex Morono by, if he had taken him down, beat him up on the ground, let him up, that would have been great. But he beat him so fast, we didn't learn enough from Khaos Williams. And when you do that deep dive on his record, and when you do start to think about, okay, who has Abdul Razak Alhassan been able to beat? The Nico Prices of the world. Like, Alhassan at his best, I thought at one point was going to be a big problem in the UFC. I thought his age was getting to a point where, maybe we're going to start to fall off. I just don't know if we've gotten to that point yet. Because Alhassan at his best, I think we can both agree, he is very similar to like a Vicente Luque with worse cardio, where he's going to land those leg kicks. He's going to land those body kicks. He's really going to break you down as the fight moves on because he has such a good kicking game. And he's fighting Khaos Williams, who might be one of the few guys whose cardio is on par with his. I don't think Khaos can go out there and really have that, long kind of grinding game plan that you need to beat a guy like Abdul Razak Alhassan.
And I mean, Matt, I look at this one, and it's really difficult because, again, Abdul Razak Alhassan in his last fight, as the camera does its own thing, he gassed hard, and Munir Lazez, very technical, lots of power. Those flying knees were great. The clinch work was really good for him as well. And Abdul Razak Alhassan did the Carlos Condit and blew his wad early because he was going for the finish and he thought he could have it. The thing that troubles me with Khaos Williams, I love the finish that he had against Alex Morono in his last fight because he knew exactly when to pour it on. He knew when he had Morono hurt and Morono started to back up, he went full speed ahead. But before he rocked Alex Morono, he planted his feet and threw 3 of the hardest punches I've ever seen. They look like cinder blocks, and they all hit air. And that's not good for your cardio.
Okay.
I don't like that.
I agree. It's hard to say that a guy looked bad where he knocked a guy out in 30 seconds.
That's the only critique. Exactly. Right?
So it's just there's so many unknowns for Khaos Williams. Again, it's the whole like Conor Jose Aldo thing where is that the greatest knockout ever because of who he did it to and the circumstances around it and how fast he did it? Or does that almost kind of take away from the performance because it was so fast?
LTJ Money hitting us up in the super chat with $5. Again, I see a lot of people going with Khaos Williams. I see a lot of people going against him. So let's see what the voters have over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. 316 total votes for Abdul Razak Alhassan, 115 for Khaos Williams. That's good for 73% over there. And Matt, overall, it's a good fight. I like it. I'm going with Abdul Razak Alhassan. But there's no value in it for me based on what I saw in Abdul Razak Alhassan's last fight. Should he be this big of a favorite? I don't think so. At more than a 2-1. Again, Khaos Williams, it is what it is. So, I like it. I think it's good. Now we move into our main event of the evening. And Matt, this fight, Paul Felder, Rafael dos Anjos, Battle of the Cookie Dusters. It's a great fight. And again, kudos, hats off to Paul Felder. I think it's a good one. What do you think here?
I have a lot of thoughts on this fight, and I don't really know where I want to begin, but I guess I'll start here. Paul Felder's striking might be at the same level of Rafael dos Anjos. I would argue it's at a higher level. And you have to go back to his last 2 performances. Paul Felder outstruck Dan Hooker, but also got out-wrestled by Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker is one of the better strikers in the UFC. Again, that's not a crazy thing to say. It's not a hot take. Dan Hooker's Muay Thai is absurd. He's got great head movement. He's great defensively. I can't say enough the good things about the striking, especially of Dan Hooker. Paul Felder, I thought, won that fight. Now, I did think he lost the Edson Barbosa fight, though. And this is something that is...
I agree.
Thank you. This is a bit of a theme with Paul Felder's fights. A, he's very good at winning $50,000 bonuses. He is never involved in a boring fight. And that's what you gotta love Paul Felder for. He's gonna go out there, give you everything he has every fight. He gets that, look on his face and just kind of marches forward, has that really high guard. I think the elbows are going to give RDA problems because RDA The last time we saw him at 155, he got knocked out by Eddie Alvarez. No shame in that whatsoever. Eddie Alvarez, one of the greatest lightweights of all time. And he got beat badly by Tony Ferguson at altitude in Mexico against quite possibly the man with the greatest cardio ever. And then he decided to move back up to 170. I don't think just based off those two performances, that's a bad enough look to make you reconsider your career to that extent. But then when you add in the stories about his weight cuts down to 155, I'm extremely worried about RDA right now. And everyone...
Brandon L lost to Dan Hooker in the Amis by split, so Brandon L could, under different circumstances, maybe you could be here fighting RDA. You never know.
That's really cool, but yeah, no, that's awesome. Anyways, I'm just excited about that now. Paul Felder, I do think on the outside is going to give RDA a lot of problems. RDA's bread and butter is that whole, I'm going to go volume heavy, and then when you think we're having a striking battle, then I'm going to take you down. Go back to the Anthony Pettis.
Robbie Lawler.
Or Robbie Lawler. No, I don't think that's a great fight to take from, so I'm going to go back a little further. The Anthony Pettis fight is a great example, and I'm going to bring up that fight a few times because who is one of Paul Felder's main training partners at Rufus Sport? Anthony Pettis. So you know that Paul Felder was probably helping him in that camp, and you know that Anthony Pettis is going to be able to give Paul Felder tips. Whether there's that many of them to take from that fight, because RDA, that's one of the more one-sided title fights you'll ever see. But I do think if anyone is going to be Paul Felder's return fight, I like it to be this fight. I know when Dan Hooker was fighting Dustin Poirier, Paul Felder tweeted out like, oh, I'd come back for the winner of this. I'm sure he would because Paul Felder's crazy. But that's not really the fight I want to see him come back to. I like this one.
And I mean, Matt, the chat's kind of going crazy. I see a lot of people thinking different thoughts here. We're at 290 likes. So if you haven't tossed us a like, please do. Let's get this one over 300.
Crazy.
Before we wrap it up, and we'll go back down through the entire card before we head out of here, because we do have 50 minutes until this card begins with Don'Tale Mace taking on Roque Martinez. But Matt, it is a tough one. I mean, like you, and I had to get it out there, the fact that I thought Hooker won the fight against Felder, but I thought Felder beat Barboza at UFC 252. Wow, that's the way that it happened. I meant to say the other way around. They're tough to try and remember. But again, Paul Felder's been in some absolute dogfights. You look at the wins that he's had. Some people really liked our Prince Edward Island reference to Jason Sago in the fight. But Paul Felder, the quality of wins that Paul Felder has in the UFC definitely aren't up to par with the fights that Dos Anjos has had. But Paul Felder's really put it on a number of guys, and it is a very difficult one to try and figure out because with Dos Anjos, you're fighting the cream of the crop at 170 pounds. You had said, I mean, Colby Covington, you're wrestling with Colby Covington. You're talking about Robbie Lawler, former champion, and he wins that fight in a main event, and so on and so forth. It is a very difficult one to try and figure out. And Matt, I'm going to let you figure this one out because I see a comment there from Mind Music, and I'll be right back. Matt, talk about this fight for a second, and I'll do the fans a solid.
Yeah, so I do think this is a really interesting fight, and I do think it really comes down in majority to there's so many ways that RDA can decide to fight this fight. RDA, if he really wants to, can go out there and fight him like the Anthony Pettis fight. He could also fight him like Robbie Lawler, where he isn't going for as many takedowns. Again, the weight cut for Dos Anjos coming back down to 155, I really can't talk about that enough because you have a guy who hasn't done it in years. It's not like weight cutting gets easier the older you get. So if Paul Felder is able to crack him early and really hurt him, I think we could see, not and new, but I do think we could see Paul Felder having, kind of the perfect comeback retirement fight. But if RDA takes Paul Felder down, and I gotta stress this, I want to believe in Paul Felder. I'm going to tell everyone this right now. When this fight happens, I'm going to hope Paul Felder wins.
And I mean, hey, the likes went up to 347. Christopher Cruz, and I mean, the talk was about grabbing a Molson. We'll crack a Molson here on camera, and we'll get into it. If we look at this one in terms of the total votes, as I'm way too close to the camera, if I have a look over on the Instagrams and you look like a ghost, 299 total votes for Rafael Dos Anjos to 155 for Felder. That's good for 66% on Dos Anjos. And Matt, if I have a look at the odds here, Rafael Dos Anjos opened up at a minus 160. He's now at a minus 199. If we have a look at Paul Felder, opened up at plus 140. He's now at a plus 166. And again, I'm throwing a lot of people off because we're on the wrong sides. But it is what it is, and I'll back up because I'm too loud. We picked Rafael Dos Anjos at the start of the week, and do you have any reservations about that pick? I mean, both guys made weights.
I mean,
kudos to Paul Felder to make the weight.
As I was saying when you got your beer. Yeah, RDA can do all the things on the feet that Paul Felder can. The issue is Paul Felder can't do everything on the ground that RDA can, and I do think that's going to be an issue. I think for as good as Paul Felder is, and for as much as I'd like to see kind of the storyline of him coming back and, doing it for his father's memory, beating the former champion, kind of leaving on the best win of his career, if he decides that's what he wants to do, would be phenomenal. RDA's finally going to have the grappling advantage over someone, and I feel like he's going to want to show it off. It's been so many fights where RDA is the one on the defense. He's the one getting backed up. He's the one getting taken down. The Michael Chiesa fight's a great one that no one seems to remember happened, and I don't know why. Like, no one wants to bring up the fact that RDA got beat by Michael Chiesa every single round and got out-wrestled and out-grappled by him. Michael Chiesa is phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but I do think that's the first time you see a loss in a guy's career where it's a drop-off from the rest of the level of competition. Because you go from Usman, you go from Leon Edwards, you go from Colby Covington, no shame. Those are the 3 top welterweights in the world. Now you're losing to Michael Chiesa, a former lightweight who is a good grappler, but we've seen himself get submitted. So I am siding with RDA. I do think he is going to really want to show off the grappling that he hasn't been able to in the past. I think this will be a very exciting fight for about the first 2 rounds. But as RDA does start to get hit a little bit by Paul Felder, I think he's going to want to implement his wrestling as the fight progresses. And that's probably going to be the route it takes. Again, I hope Paul Felder wins. There'd be nothing that would make me happier than seeing him go out there like Jorge Masvidal styled, double flying knee 5 seconds in. I just don't see it happening.
I've got RDA in this fight as well. I mean, it's one of those ones that's tough to try and switch your pick closer to the end of the week. I'm looking forward to this fight. Have no cheddar on it. It is, of course, a whirly pop and popcorn,
if ever there was one,
type of fight. I mean, hey, I'm really looking forward to it. So let's go back to the start. We'll whip back through our picks. We really do appreciate everybody for tuning in. I think this is a great card, and you got about 45 minutes before those prelims do start up here in Canada. There's some on Fight Pass, and the rest of it is on TSN, normally TSN 5. And then you get to see friend of the show, normally Aaron Bronstetter and Robin Black, after it on TSN. Neat stuff up here in the Great White North. Matt, first fight on the card, Don'Tale Mayes, Roque Martinez. Again, there's value. Roque Martinez at about a plus 200. I'm going with Mayes, but I'm dead serious. I would not be surprised if Roque Martinez wins this.
Yeah, Don'Tale Mayes will probably win. I don't love the odds around it, but I do think Don'Tale Mayes, just the boxing from the outside, he should be able to get this one done.
So both of us going with Mayes there. Morono McKee, again, this is a very difficult one because I think a lot of people aren't giving Reese McKee the credit he deserves. Striking's on point. Grappling's on point. Jiu-jitsu's on point. His wrestling leaves a little bit to be desired. Alex Morono, maybe not the best forward pressure heavy type of guy with his wrestling, but you know how good of his striking is. So again, I'm going to go with Alex Morono in this fight.
I think Alex Morono, I wouldn't be surprised if I woke up, of course I'm going to be watching it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Reese McKee was able to get a stoppage win. I just think that wrestling defense of his is such a big kind of Achilles heel that he won't be able to make up for it over this fight.
So, Matt, if we go into our next fight, we have Geraldo de Freitas taking on Tony Gravely. It's a very, very good fight. Overall, you have a great striker and a good jiu-jitsu artist in Geraldo de Freitas. You get the great wrestling from Tony Gravely. We disagree on this one. I've got de Freitas.
I have Gravely.
Matt, we look into our next fight. We have Randa Marcos taking on Kanako Murata. I've got the former Invicta Strawweight champion Murata to get the win in her UFC debut.
I have the current Randa Marcos winning. I do think that could low-key maybe be a fight of the night. I know that's a weird opinion, but I do think that could kind of be one of those Louis Smolka, Tim Elliott's where you just see a ton of fun scrambling. So I have higher hopes for that fight than a lot of people out there.
Matt, we go into our next fight. We're looking at Jose Alberto Quinones taking on Luis Smolka again. Disagreeing here. I've got Luis Smolka to get the win.
I got Jose Quinones. I don't think we've seen the best version of him in the UFC. I do think he'll get the win finally.
All right, Matt. So we continue on. We look at our next fight. We've got Kay Hansen taking on Corey McKenna. Let's agree on something, eh?
Let's do it.
Shake on it. You can't shake these days. You just shouldn't. You shouldn't. Stay safe. I've got Kay Hansen.
Kay Hansen, 100%. This is one of the more confident picks, too.
All right, Matt. Next fight. We're disagreeing again, Matt. You've got Brennan Allen. I've got Sean Strickland. But possible fight of the night here.
Without a doubt. Very excited for this one.
Matt, really looking forward to it. In our next fight, we have Ashley Yoder taking on Miranda Granger. Both in agreement that the younger of the two is going to get the win in Miranda Granger.
Like when the T1000 fights the T2000, or I don't know the Terminator series as well as I should, but yeah, just fighting kind of the newer and improved version of Ashley Yoder. So
and Manasa wants us to switch back sides. I'm going to stay where I'm at. Matt can look like a vampire over there.
I like this.
Abdul Razak Alhassan taking on Khaos Williams. This should be a great fight. Possible performance of the night if either one of these guys gets a finish, because I really do expect it to be a great fight. I'm liking Abdul Razak Alhassan in this one, ever so slightly.
This is inside the distance if ever there was one. It's either Khaos Williams catches Abdul or vice versa. It's going to be an absolute brawl for as long as it lasts. I'm excited, but of course, Abdul, Razak, Alhassan should get the win.
And back up to our main event, we got Paul Felder taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Let's just switch screens for the heck of it. Fight of the night possibility right there. We're still on different sides on this.
Wow.
And Dos Anjos, Paul Felder, possibility of a fight of the night. I really am looking forward to this one. It should be a great fight. And I mean, hey, will it be a retirement fight, do you think?
It could be for both. Like, if Paul Felder goes out there and wins, I wouldn't be surprised if RDA decided to call it a career. And vice versa. If Paul Felder wins, he could retire. Losing, he could retire. Paul Felder's kind of set up no matter what. And he had said it himself, too. He was like, okay, this is a no-lose situation for me. If I win, it's great. I just beat the former champion, and it's very exciting. If I lose, I can just go back to, being a coach and doing commentary work. Like, it's not a sad story for Paul Felder. He either gets to go out and gets the biggest win of his career, or he loses taking a big chance, and there's no shame in that.
And Geriatric saying, I think triathlon training is a non-factor. Both guys have world-class cardio.
Tell Nate Diaz that.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of. And I mean, not to sound like a dingus, but yeah, tell Nate Diaz that. That's what he was doing ahead of the Conor McGregor fight. Uber talented, how good his boxing and his jiu-jitsu, but
in Mexico,
I think the whole training for a triathlon really did help him in that fight, because McGregor, what's the one issue with the guy? It's always been cardio. So
there's a reason fighters run for their cardio.
I look at this fight, and again, another question, do we ever disagree this much? Not often.
No, this is one of them.
Not often, ones. So this is one of them. So one of the guys is going to have a bad card. Maybe we both do, but I'm really looking forward to it. I have Dos Anjos. And Matt, this card, it is what it is. I mean, it's a card. It's going to happen next week. Next week's good. Next week's really good. So I'm looking forward to that. Let us know in the comments what you're thinking. What do you want to see from Fight Night Picks moving forward? Because we're working on some really awesome content to come out. Make sure you check out with Early Stoppage, myself and John Franklin. And again, I don't want to spill the beans, but there is a lot of great stuff going on with Fight Night Picks. We really do appreciate everybody over there in the chat. I really think that this could be a good card. And hey, Fight Night Picks moving and shaking in 2020.
And shout out to you guys before we tune off. Again, none of this stuff would be possible without all you guys tuning in every week to listen to us, make our predictions, watch these videos. So again, none of this could be possible without you guys. We really appreciate all the support. And yeah, let's make 2021 a great year.
Matt, as we always say, with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt.